Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today I wanted to address a big question. Is wine tasting nonsense, scam, bogus, fake, and total hoax, or is there actually science behind it? If you know me, you know how much I dislike wine snobs. Those people who insist that wine should remain on an ultra-elitist shelf, reserved only for the lucky few who can truly understand it. I am saying this because at first glance, for some, this video might seem like one of those wine snob moments. There's a lot of information floating around the World Wide Web suggesting that wine tasting is hoax. But in reality, it is not. And to me, this idea seems to spread mostly amongst those who don't fully understand it. So today, let's take a closer look at why wine tasting, and especially blind tasting, is not fake. There is a reason why so many of my mentors, including those who actually hold Master of Wine title, say that the practical part of the exam, tasting 12 wines a day for 3 days, is actually a theoretical exam. People often think that success in blind tasting comes down to having an exceptional nose or palate, or that it is some kind of talent. But the truth is that without the knowledge to support what you are smelling and tasting in the glass, no one could make an accurate and logical conclusion. Talent and well-developed olfactory abilities are important when assessing wine, but to discuss its quality, origin, grape variety, and maturity, you must have some book knowledge as well. You might taste high, mouth-watering acidity, but you have to have knowledge to know which grapes tend to retain their acidity well. You might describe wine as pale garnet in color, but to reach to a logical conclusion, you need to know which grape varieties tend to produce wines with lower color intensity. Of course, this is just the basics, and in reality, wine style is shaped by so many different elements. And the more you understand them, the better you understand what's in your glass. In fact, combining both sensory assessment and knowledge allows you to play quite fun game. For example, imagine describing wine as pale lemon in color, driven by intense nose of primary fruits such as lime, lemon, and white spring blossom, with no oak influence, high mouth-watering acidity, a light yet focused body, and moderate alcohol of 12%. Possibly a talent and well-developed olfactory abilities allow you to describe wine in such precise detail, but it is knowledge that allows you to conclude. Pause the video and comment below if you know, 3, 2, 1, that it is a young Riesling. Of course, reading every book about wine does not guarantee you that you will reach the correct conclusion on the first sip. It takes practice because we all perceive wine differently. My lemon note might be your lime note, even though we are smelling and tasting the exact same wine. Similarly, we may perceive acidity or tannins differently, so personal experience plays an important role in how we interpret the wine. That's why tasting wines, writing down our own thoughts and conclusions is essential for improving blind tasting skills. And practice does not always need to be blind. In fact, I would argue that sometimes knowing what you are tasting can be more beneficial than simply guessing blind. When you know what you are tasting, you can build a mental image of the wine, track stylistic trends, and develop a stronger foundation for future blind tastings. Because let's be honest, the wine world is constantly evolving. Generational shifts, changing consumer preferences, new technologies, all of these factors shape wine. That's why something I have learned years ago might not be even true now. In fact, one of the most important reasons to taste wine blind is to assess its quality. It is not about performing fun party tricks like identifying grape variety, origin, or vintage. Of course, there are plenty of videos circulating this very platform suggesting that people cannot taste the difference between cheap and expensive wines. But how many of the people tasting wine in these videos are actually wine professionals? People who know what to look for in a quality wine or how quality is properly assessed. And quality does not always equal simple enjoyment. It is the same with art, music, food. For example, I love ballet, but I for sure am not qualified to discuss how well a solo dance was performed. You might argue that there are professionals tasting wines as well, and you are right. Now let's address two important aspects here. First, like in any profession, there are people who are simply better at doing their job than others. Some have more experience, while others may have biases or personal interests that is not unique to the wine industry. Second, sometimes those cheap wines can be really well made, while those expensive wines can be disappointing. However, this does not mean that blind tasting is a fraud. In fact, there are real conclusions to be drawn from tastings like these. Before we move on, I want to touch upon something that I will discuss in more detail in my wine judging video. Too often, wines are tasted in a rush. Wine can be shy, quiet, and slow to blossom, and if we don't give it time, we might completely misjudge it, especially if there's a louder player in the room. Think about it, you could be listening to truly beautiful music, although quiet, and if someone is talking over or listening even louder music, you might miss that beauty. I have seen it a lot in wine judging competitions. Quiet beauties are too often overshadowed by intense fruit bombs. Now, when I taste for quality, I usually assess the intensity and concentration of the fruit. I am not talking about super extracted, expressive fruit, but rather how the fruit acts on the nose and palate and whether it is in balance with other components of the wine. I always try to pay attention to the structural elements of the wine, such as acidity and tannin. It is important to remember that these elements can be high and maybe even not to my personal liking. But what I am looking for is how they are weaved with each other, how they interact with each other. Aftertaste also plays an important role in quality for me, how long and persistent it is. Acidity alone or alcohol alone are not defined as aftertaste. It is the fruit we want to taste. And there are some wines that have very long-lasting finish. Just recently I tasted Roses de Jeanne champagne during the day, and when I went to bed, even after dinner and teeth brushing, I could still feel that taste on my tongue. Now, in this particular case, it probably was not the actual taste, but rather the depth and intensity of the wine, leaving such a lasting impression that it was imprinted in my mind. But the point still stands. Lastly, coming back to the roll of time, I have noticed that the best wines continue to develop in the glass. A good wine might be great on the first sip, but it might lack the tension or energy to sustain its life in the glass. Meanwhile, the greatest wines will be persistent in the glass forever. Wine professionals are only human, and we can never be completely unbiased or 100% objective, since we taste through our own senses and judge wine on our experiences. However, the best amongst us are absolutely great and are not afraid to share their honest opinions with confidence and integrity. Let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on blind tasting, and maybe there are some interesting and exciting experiences you want to share. As I said before, there are some wine professionals that are better at their job than others, so make sure to watch this video next about nonsense wine professionals do.